Dean Hankey here, Dino in Reno, the marketing magician, back here with your VIP keys to relationship success, your people, persuasion, and profit power. Understand people, and you will understand the basic principles of persuasion at work. Because once again, either you're making a deposit or withdrawal, and there are scientific ways to make very specific deposits with people who are typically or may not be predominantly like you. Kinesthetic, that feeling state person, right? That's the people, you'll recognize them instantly. Typically speaking, they're a little more paced, but they relate to the world and each other in feelings through their body, through their emotions, is their predominant filter on the world. You'll see and hear them say things like, that feels right. That feels right. Yeah, that feels good, or that feels bad, or right. Instead of the visual says, see what I mean? That looks right. Can you see what I'm saying? The auditory is like, yeah, that sounds right. That sounds good, or that sounds bad, right? For the kinesthetic person, the person who predominantly filters the world through their body, through their emotions, is that feels good, that feels bad, that feels right, that feels right, or that makes sense. Do you get what I'm feeling? Do you get what I'm feeling? Since you get what I'm saying, or do you get what I'm hearing, right? Or you get right what I'm saying. Do you get what I'm feeling? And typically they're a little slower, and you'll understand that in just a second. Does that make sense to you? As opposed to, do you see what I'm saying? Or does that look right to you? Does that make sense to you? Right? That really touched me. That moved me. So you begin to identify the kinesthetic people by the nature and pace and language and tempo and even the tonality of their language and their presentation. Kinesthetics are typically a little bit slower when it comes to pace, and the slow or kinesthetic or feeling people sometimes perceive visual people as shifty, as they just move way too fast. They can't be trusted. When neither is true, right? But visual people, they see these slow people as, well, slow. And that's not necessarily true either. They're not slow, they're not less intellectual, they're not less smart. They're just they're actually more intelligent in some ways, because they take time. They take time to think, because they're introspective and they're sensitive. These are the people that you find that don't rarely, if ever, will start the conversation. They might join in one, but they'll usually be the ones sitting back and taking it all in, and they'll see them nodding their head or nodding their head, or right? And it's just, again, if I'm visual and I'm moving at warp speed with my hair on fire in front of a kinesthetic, I'm going to slow down. I'm going to listen. I'm going to pay attention. I'm going to say, you know what? I might reach out, and when I shake their hands, I might hold it for a few seconds longer than I might hold the hand of a visual person. I'm going to slow my tempo and my rate of delivery down. I'm going to maybe not speak as loudly and be as verbose, but I'm going to be a little more sensitive and introspective, and maybe give myself a little time between the words that I deliver. And again, the goal is simply to be able to make more deposits, not to manipulate the environment, but to honor the person in front of you. Remember, we keep saying no people, N-O people, no people, no success. But if you know people, if you understand, if you K-N-O-W, if you know people, you will then know success. Because if I'm able to more successfully make deposits based on your predominant personality style, am I going to be more or less likely to more deeply connect and communicate and ultimately convert the connection, right? So, unpacking this a little bit further, dresses, typically they don't want to stand out. These are your more standard attire folks. These are the people that are going to wear the darker, more subdued colors. They're probably not even going to be in the pales. They're probably going to be in the dark hues. Not, again, these are just indicators. These are not exclusive. And again, I will remind you once again, we're not all visual. We're not all auditory. We're not all kinesthetic. We're all of these things, but we're predominantly, like I'm predominantly visual. So I have to work to some degree outside of my natural dominant sort of personality type to move forward, move fast, especially if I'm working with a kinesthetic. So if somebody says, "How are you?" I'm going to say, "I'm doing great, thank you." And you'd think that that might be perceived as mimicking or mocking, but it's not. It's perceived as, "Oh, another person like me." And if you want to serve people, and you want to, once again, leverage this people persuasion and profit power at work, you have to make more appropriate deposits by being more like them or like others, right? And kinesthetic people, it matters to anyone. You know, it matters what you think, because thinking is their predominant. It's an internal strategy. It's a kinesthetic. It's a feeling. So what you think matters. So when they say, "What do you think?" they're not just asking. Like a visual might say, "Hey, what do you think? Do you think that looks okay?" A kinesthetic and a visual may or may not really want a thought-invoked answer. But a kinesthetic person will say, "Wow, you know, what do you think?" And a good response might be something like, "Wow, I appreciate you. That makes me feel incredible that you're considering my opinion here, that what I think is important." And what I think is, and then you can, again, share your thoughts or ideas, or, you know, or you can say, when you honor them by saying, "Well, what do you think? What's important to you? How does that make you feel?" You know? So what people think and what you think about what people think is important to a kinesthetic predominant personality type, right? They're comfortable, again, typically sensible. Why? Because they're in their head. They're thinking a lot more because they're in their feeling and their body, right? Kinesthetic. Typically, these are the people who are the wallflowers. They're shy. They're typically more caring, even though they may not display it. They're typically more caring. They often get taken advantage of because, why? They're quiet. They don't speak up for themselves quite as readily. They're more emotional. They're connected to their body, their emotions, and their sensory states, right? So they're more emotional, which is a good thing. And again, all strengths, all struggles. Shy could be a strength, and it could be a struggle. Caring could be a strength, could be a struggle. Get taken advantage of, smart. Typically, they're smarter because they're inside their head. They're thinking all the time before they say things. Like the auditory might think, but they're gonna say things, maybe even oftentimes before they think. I can guarantee you, visual will just say things because it looks like the right thing to say, right? Looks like the right time to say it, so they're going to say it. Again, these are sort of global generalizations, but it'll help you to understand people so you can begin to make more appropriate deposits and serve them at the level of they want to be served. So they're a thinker. They're typically more supportive and yet selfish because it's important to them. Like that, if you support them and a visual comes along and they're maybe not as the same level or same kind, we support at a different level. We support you by doing things. A kinesthetic person supports by maybe they're more encouraging in their language and if, yet selfish to the degree that it matters to what they think. So they may not step up and say anything, right? So the kinesthetic nature is kind of an important distinction as we roll through this process. And we hope you understand that you're not all visual, not all auditory or kinesthetic. We're all three of these things, but most of us are predominantly. You'll begin to understand, like at home with your spouse or with your children or with your direct reports at work or with the people in the cubicle next to you or your boss. if your boss or the people that you hope to have influence with, that if they move faster than you do, you might want to learn to level up and be more visual in nature while you're with them, or say, leverage the visual language archetypes, or leverage these things, become more like them, so that for a period of time, you're not being inauthentic. You're just looking to serve people. It happens all the time. Listen, you'll engage somebody whom you desperately want to understand, who maybe speaks with a deep foreign accent, foreign to you anyway, and all of a sudden you'll find yourself leaning in, and you'll find yourself almost adopting this unconscious, other than conscious accent, and somebody will say, I'm trying to connect and communicate to you. Well, and more like them, because you want to understand them. See, this happens naturally. It happens as part of who we are, is how we're wired to connect and communicate with people. I'm just suggesting that if you understand these, you can begin to do it on purpose, so you can do it by design and be of more value, service, make more deposits than withdrawals, and have more connections, more communications, and ultimately more conversions, thereby serving more people more profitably. The VIP keys to relationship success and your people, persuasion, and profit power. Hope this serves.